Most people spend their lives thinking only forward. I mean, what they want and how to get it. And that's fine if you're aiming for pretty average results. But if you're aiming for something extraordinary, like I keep saying, being in the top 1%, then you need to think differently. Because the greatest thinkers in history, they didn't just think forward, but they also thought backward. It's a mental model called inversion. And in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly it works and how you could adopt that with real life examples from my corporate life. And you can actually start using the model today. This model has completely changed the way I think and make decisions. And I hope it can do the same for you. So stay on with me. Let's get on the bike and talk about the mental model called inversion. Because I personally think this model has been so powerful for me that even on the ride when I come out today, I use the same mental model, the model of inversion. So please stick on with me. We will ride as we talk. See you on the road in a minute.
If I told you that the real secret to progress is not about moving forward, but it's actually about going backward. I know you may be surprised and you might be thinking I flipped my lid, but stay with me as I share the secret and how this really helped me in my personal as well as professional life. In my 2.5 decades of corporate experience, I have had several bosses and I've learned something or the other from every single boss that I had. So one such thing that I learned from one of my bosses was, he used to say, it's if you want to succeed, you got to figure out what is stopping you from succeeding. And if you try and flip that around and focus on things that prevent you from succeeding, you certainly will make it to the top. And this was absolutely a brilliant tip, and I actually used it in my personal and professional life, and I will talk about it as we ride today. And trust me, this works like magic. Now, let's get into the meat of the context. So we spend so much of our lives chasing success, asking how to win, how to get ahead, how to become someone better. But if the most powerful answers to life's hardest problems come from flipping the question. Today, we explore one of the most mind-bending mental models ever used by great thinkers, billionaires, and even war strategies. And I don't see a reason as to why the same can't be adopted in a personal, professional life. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's called the law of inversion. And it might just change the way you think forever. Well, I'm going to give you examples of how I use this without knowing it's called the law of inversion. And I was able to see the results. All I was focused on was what can stop me from completing a project or achieving a milestone. And this may sound a bit cynical, but I was looking at things that will fail me. And that helped me in many instances. And it gave me a fresh perspective to look at things. Let's start with the basics. The law of inversion is simple. Instead of asking, how do I succeed? You ask, how could I fail? Instead of asking, what should I do? You ask, what should I avoid? It's the art of thinking in reverse. That's what it is. It forces clarity. It eliminates noise. Trust me, do it this time. And guess what? It works across every domain of life. Career, health, money, relationships. And you may ask why? Because avoiding stupidity is often easier than chasing brilliance. So let's take an example. You're trying to be more productive. You've got to ask yourself a question, what's killing my productivity? And the answers will start coming, which is checking the phone every 5 minutes, multitasking, poor sleep, maybe lack of exercise. Just remove those and watch your output explode. Now let me tell you one of the most iconic inversion stories from history. It's from World War II. Now, US bombers would return from battlefields covered in bullet holes. Engineers wanted to reinforce the parts of the plane that had most damage, right, when you physically inspect it. Makes sense, right? That's what any one of us would do. More bullets, so more bullet holes mean more vulnerability. But one man disagreed. His name was Abraham Wald, one of the greatest statisticians, I'm told. What Wald did was he flipped the question. He said, you are only seeing the planes that survived. The ones that didn't come back, what about them? They were probably hit in places you don't see, like the engine or the cockpit. And he said, that's where you need to add the armor. So I think the crux of the story is that don't just look at what survived, look at what died, and also why did it die. Now, well, that's not just military wisdom, it's also life's wisdom. Now, let's say you're stuck in a job and you ask yourself, how do I grow? Or let's say, how do I get promoted? Now, just flip that and ask, why do most people get stuck or demoted? And you will actually find surprising truths. You would find things like lack of communication, not learning new skills, playing office politics, being reactive instead of proactive. And so, if you really want to grow, just avoid what makes people stagnant. Sometimes that's all it takes. Now, I want to kind of reflect on a specific example of mine. I was leading the risk function of the bank, and I was testing the vulnerability of the core banking system. And that was the first time I applied the law of inversion. Instead of understanding how to ensure the systems work well without any problem, I actually got a bunch of colleagues from IT and asked them to document all the ways in which the system can fail or could be hacked. Now, the responses were really shocking. It led us to a gold mine, literally I mean it. We now knew what exactly we need to do to make the system more stronger. So the idea was to brainstorm on what can go wrong, and if you're able to avoid those pitfalls, then you will achieve your goal for sure, 100%. Trust me. Inversions can also be used in relationships. So most people ask, how do I build strong connection? But the better question is, what ruins my relationships? And here is a list that could probably emerge. First could be dishonesty. Second could be poor listening. Third could be blame games. Fourth could be taking people for granted. Bringing ego into every conversation could be another killer. So now that you have the list, you don't need to be a perfect communicator. Just avoid these killers, and your relationship will automatically become 10x better. Let me also take another example. I think this is called the golden principle, which says treat others the way that you want to be treated. There's also something called a platinum rule, which says treat others the way that they want to be treated. And obviously, for the first one, you're actually assuming that if you have to treat others the way that you want to get treated, then you assume that everybody's just like you. And if you're going to treat others the way that they want to get treated, I can bet on it that you probably don't know that person. So the question you got to ask yourself, which actually is a very, very powerful paradigm, is how would you not like to be treated? Somebody says, how do you like to be treated? It could be difficult as to how do you want to be treated, right? I really don't know. But if I say how you don't want to be treated, that becomes easier because the list will be shorter and crisper and easier to adopt. So the law of inversion, as you can see, is a very powerful tool to really get the right solutions for the problems. Now, you could also use inversion in the domain of health. Now, you want to get fit? Don't start by adding 100 things to your routine. It makes no sense. Instead, invert. Ask what destroys your health or what is destroying your health. I'm sure the list could be sugar addiction, sleep deprivation, sedentary lifestyle, mindless snacking. Once you stop these, your baseline improves massively. Inversion is about removal and not addition. Getting healthy isn't always about smoothies and gym selfies. Sometimes it's just about not doing stupid stuff consistently. Now, you could also use inversion in investing and money matters. Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, I don't know how do you pronounce that. Once he actually said, all I want to know is where am I going to die, so I'll never go there. Sounds very interesting. Now that's inversion. Now in investing, most people would ask the question like, how do I get rich? The better question or the inversion of this question is, how do people go broke? And the answers could be taking on too much debt, commonsensical, investing emotionally, chasing those hype coins. So if you're trying to get rich quick, just avoid these and you'll probably end up ahead of 90% of the people. Now you could use inversion in your personal growth as well. So we always ask this question to ourselves, how can I become the best version of myself? By try asking, what would make me feel like I wasted my life? And the answers that might come up is living someone else's dream. Maybe not taking care of health, not spending time with family, ignoring creativity, could be living on autopilot. When you know what wasted life looks like, you will know exactly what not to do. So the next time you're stuck, confused, or simply overwhelmed, don't look forward, look backwards. Flip the question, invert the problem, because often the fastest way forward is to go backwards. Avoid the stupidity and the brilliance will take care of itself. See, the world is obsessed with additions, but sometimes, seriously, the real magic happens in subtraction. If this video made you think differently, share it with someone who's trying to move forward in life. And that's the whole purpose of me trying to bring these videos very frequently, is I really want to help people. I want to give back what I've learned. I want to make sure people progress in their lives. And if these videos are adding value, give me some comments, hit that like and subscribe button. I want more people to benefit from what I have learned in the last 2.5 decades of working in big corporates. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, take good care of yourself and if possible, someone else too. And bye for now. Cheers.